Service lights on, so that just means I've got to change the oil. Hello folks, as you've just seen, the service lights come on the bike, so that tells me I need to do my annual service. What I'm going to do today is run through with you, personally the most important part of that is the oil change and how I do it, and a few little things that I've found to make my life easier. The process is pretty simple. If you haven't got one of these for your bike, I highly recommend you get them. I would get one from a cross runner, but Haynes don't make one. So the tools you're going to need are going to be 4 litres of 540 oil, a new oil filter and a new oil filter crush washer, an oil filter wrench, a T30 torque bit, a T50 torque bit. I've got a T50 on my torque wrench, and I've also got a T30 on this ratchet spanner. Also, I've got a funnel, an old kitchen jug, and my oil pan to catch all the oil coming out of the bike. So the first thing I do is remove the sump guard, and I've already given them a little soaking of WD-40, because obviously where the sump guard bolts are, they're the first things to get covered in crud, and you may not be able to wash them that easily. What I then do is warm the bike up to around 60 degrees or 140 Fahrenheit. This just makes the oil more fluid and easier for you to actually drain out. So the next thing is to remove the oil filler cap, which is here. As you can see, I've got an aftermarket Wunderlich one. You may have the standard black plastic. If your bike has the standard BMW OEM oil filler cap like that, and you don't possess the proper tool, which just goes in there and undoes, what you can do is use a flat-headed screwdriver and just go in like this, give it a couple of taps at the angle, and it will push it out. Like that. Next thing, now the engine's nice and warm, need to remove the drain plug. I don't normally wear gloves, but for this I do, because this will get very messy. Sorry, earlier I stated that you'd need a T50 torque bit. You don't, it's actually a number 10 hex bit. And then just undo your drain plug. The reason I take the sump guard off first is so I reduce the risk of me touching the exhaust system, because obviously we are very close to the exhaust itself. It's going to go any second. There she goes. That's what I mean. It does get oily and messy. Let that drain all out. Whilst the oil's draining, it's worthwhile cleaning up your drain plug and just checking you've got a small magnet on the end there. Just check it for any swarf. Always worthwhile just giving it a good clean and a good inspection just to make sure you haven't got any excess amounts of swarf built up. So there you go, a nice clean drain plug. Make sure have a look at the thread, make sure there's nothing built up in that, and it looks all good. When you're happy with that, I just keep that to one side so I know where it is. Sounds like we're almost out of the oil of the main sump, so now we need to tackle the oil filter. The oil filter on a GS uses a 76mm filter wrench. That one cost me, I think, about a tenner. So here's our existing oil filter, and all you do, offer your wrench up, and again you see you haven't got a lot of room to play with, so you're very close to the exhaust. So just be careful if you're doing this the first time that you don't end up bashing your nails on hot exhausts. The end of the oil filter has notches, a bit like a bolt head. The wrench, the oil filter wrench, has notches. So just offer it up, wait till it feels seated, and then just play her on, and then just gently give it a nudge. This shouldn't take too much. This is only tightened to 11 Newton meters, so it's not exactly on very tight. We have got oil, but that'll be what's in the actual oil filter, which is fine. Let your oil filter drain as well, because there will be quite a bit of oil retained in the filter. While the rest of that oil is draining, you can just clean up around the oil filter mount like this. Get rid of any oil that's spilt on the exhaust, because otherwise that will make a right mess and stink when you start the bike up. This is the original O-ring that came with the oil filter, so that gets discarded. Now, whilst the oil is still draining out of the bike, what I tend to do, now you can, if you wanted to, go with BMW's own oil. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, it's good stuff. However, this bottle, which is 1 litre, is about 13-14 pounds, and you need 4 of them. I make sure I get the right grade, which is 5W40. This 4 litre jug of Castrol cost me under £30. I'd leave you to do the maths. What I now do is, using a little bit of oil, not necessarily this much, wet your finger and just lube the oil seal around the top. I then pre-fill my filter. So what I tend to do is just fill the filter to about there. That's all. I don't need to overfill it. Next thing, the new O-ring. Again, all I do, dip that in a bit of oil, take your new crush washer, place it on your drain plug, and then just reinsert your drain plug. Just do it up finger tight initially, like so. When tightening the drain plug back up, you want it to go to 42 Newton meters. It's always useful to have a good torque wrench. 40, 42. There you go. Which one am I going? There you go, 42 Newton meters. It doesn't take much past finger tight. Once your drain plug's back on, bring your torque wrench down to 11 Newton meters. Put your spanner on there. Now what you've got to be careful of is you don't cross thread this. So just offer it up and just let it go on naturally. It should just go on finger tight. When it stops, don't manhandle it and try and lean off it. Then all you're doing, place the spanner over the top and just bring it in to 11 Newton meters. There we go. That's 11 Newton meters. Little bit of weepage, that's only to be expected. Always move the used oil over to this side so that should I get any drainage and any spillage, it goes straight into my waste oil bucket. However, that should be minimalised using my little funnel. Always amazes me how fresh oil looks like golden syrup and the old oil looks more like something you'd get out the bottom of a deep fat fryer. These engines take quite a bit of oil, about 4 litres. So what I tend to do is put 3 in and then check my sight glass. So the sight glass is reading half full after a good 5 minutes, having had the engine run for 3 minutes. The sight glass should be filled to the bottom of that circle. So all I'm going to do now is add a small amount of oil, check it, and add more as I need. But I take this bit slowly. So there we are. That's another 500 millilitres added, and that's taking it to just below the bottom of the circle, which is where it needs to be. No more than that. That's the bike run for 3 minutes. Whilst the engine was running, I was also checking around the sump plug itself and around the oil filter for any leaks. You might see a bit of smoking from excess oil being burnt off that might have got onto the exhaust that you may have missed. It is imperative to note that before you start the bike, to do that quick check, that you put the filler cap back on the top of the cylinder. This is when I do tend to use the standard factory issued. This is when I tend to use the OEM black plastic screwed plug, because it's easier than using my one that I use all the time. So at the moment, I'm just waiting now for the oil to settle back down into the engine, and then I'll have another look through the sight glass. It is a lot easier to top the oil up than try and drain some out.